Hello and welcome to Study with Sri. Here I am discussing Indian Polity by M. Lakshmikant chapter wise. In previous video, I have discussed conflict between DPSP and fundamental rights and implementation of DPSP. In this video, I will cover the principles of DPSP. Directive principle of state policy. So this policy are enumerated in the part 4 of the Constitution from Article 36 to 51. Actually, the directive principle are mentioned in Article 38 to 51. Article 36 deals with the definition of the state and Article 37 deals with the nature and significance of the directive principle. So 36 deals with the definition of the state and 37 deals with the nature and significance of the directive principles. Okay. The framers of the constitution borrowed this idea from the Irish Constitution of 1937. Irish Constitution is the Ireland Constitution. Okay, so the framers of the constitution borrowed this directive principle of state policy ye idea from the Irish Constitution of 1937 and Irish Constitution had copied it from the Spanish Constitution. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar described these principles as the novel feature of the constitution. ओके प्रीलिम्स में एंड मॉक टेस्ट में बहुत रहता है which of the following described as the novel feature of the Indian Constitution, that is directive principle of the state policy. Now directive principle of state policy along with the fundamental rights दोनों मिलके okay contain the philosophy of the constitution and is the soul of the constitution. Granville Austin has described directive principle and the fundamental right as the conscience of constitution. Okay, so Granville Austin describe किए है directive principle and the fundamental rights as the conscience of the constitution. Now features of directive principles. So the phrase directive principle of state policy denotes the ideals. Ideals mean the principles, okay, that state should keep in mind while formulating policies and enacting law. It is like a instruction page. Okay, so state should keep in mind while formulating policies and enacting laws. These are the constitutional instruction or recommendation to the state in legislative, executive, administrative matters. ठीक है, so these are the constitutional instruction or recommendation to the state in legislative, executive and administrative matters. According to Article 36, the term state in part 4 has the same meaning in part 3 dealing with the fundamental rights. Therefore, it includes the legislative and executive organs of the central and state government, all local authorities and all other public authority in the country. Okay, so Article 36 में जो state है in the part 4 has the same meaning as it include in article 12 of the part 3, that is in fundamental rights. So therefore it includes legislative, executive organs of central and state government, all local authorities, all other public authorities in the country. Okay, डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल रिसेंबल द इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शंस. ये बहुत ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है ये टर्म. इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शन को डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल रिसेंबल करता है जो एनुमरेटेड था इन गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट ऑफ 1935. in the words Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the directive principles are like instrument of instructions which were issued to the Governor General and to the governors of the colonies of India by British government under the Government of India Act of 1935. ठीक है, so in other words Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the directive principles like instrument of instruction which were issued to the Governor General and to the governors of the colonies of India by the British government under the Government of India Act of 1935. What is called as directive principle is merely another name for the instrument of instructions. Okay, directive principles का another name क्या है? Instruments of instruction. The only difference is that they are instruction to legislature and executive. Okay, they are the इंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ लेजिस्लेचर एंड द एग्जीक्यूटिव. ठीक है. डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल कंस्टिट्यूट a very comprehensive economic, social, political program for a modern democratic state. Okay, directive principle जो है ना, that constitute a very comprehensive economic, social and political program for a modern democratic state. They aim at realizing the high ideals of the justice, liberty, equality, fraternity as outlined in the preamble of the Constitution. We know that justice, liberty, equality, fraternity mentioned in the preamble of the Constitution, and the directive principle aim at realizing the high ideals of justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. Okay. Now they embody the concept of a welfare state and not a police state. Very important. Police state क्या होता है? Police state existed during the colonial era. In brief, police state are restricted concept. Okay, police state are the restricted concept of state is based on the 19th century theory of individualism. ठीक है. पुलिस स्टेट होता क्या है? पुलिस स्टेट इट इज मेनली कंसर्न्ड विद द मेंटेनेंस ऑफ लॉ एंड ऑर्डर एंड डिफेंस ऑफ द कंट्री अगेंस्ट एक्सटर्नल एग्रेशन. ठीक है. एक्सटर्नल एग्रेशन से कंट्री को डिफेंड करना, ठीक है, प्रोटेक्ट करना. एंड अ पुलिस स्टेट इट मेनली कंसर्न विद द मेंटेनेंस ऑफ लॉ एंड ऑर्डर एंड डिफेंस ऑफ द कंट्री अगेंस्ट द एक्सटर्नल एग्रेशन. बट वेलफेयर स्टेट में इंडिविजुअल के लिए सोशल एंड इकोनॉमिक डेमोक्रेसी भी प्रोवाइड होता है. पुलिस स्टेट में बस एक्सटर्नल एग्रेशन से कंट्री को बचाना होता है. ठीक है. So, in brief, they seek to establish economic and social democracy in the country. That is, directive principle seek to establish the economic and social democracy in the country. The directive principle are non-justiciable in nature. That is, they are not legally enforceable by the court for their violation. ठीक है. Directive principles जो होता है, they are not justiciable in nature. That is, they are not legally enforceable by the courts for their violation. Therefore, the government, that is central, state and local government, cannot be compelled to implement them. Okay. There is no mandatory features that to implement the directive principles of state policy. ठीक है. So directive principles. So directive principles are non-justiciable in nature and they are not legally enforceable by the courts. Now, nevertheless, the Constitution under Article 37 itself says that these principles are fundamental in governance of the country. So, ये जो principles है, these are the fundamental of the governance of the country, and it shall be duty of the state to apply this principle in making laws. And ये duty है state का कि while making laws, these directive principles should be applied. Okay. Now, the directive principle, though non-justiciable in nature, helps the courts in examining and determining the constitutional validity of law. Very important. Directive principle क्या है? Non-justiciable in nature है, but it helps the courts in examining and determining the constitutional validity of a law. एक law, suppose कोई भी law challenge किया गया है and court can take help from the directive principle to examine and determining the constitutional validity of the law. The Supreme Court has ruled many a times that determining the constitutionality of any law, if a court finds that the law in question seeks to give effect directive principle, it may consider such law to be reasonable in relation to Article 14 equality before law or Article 16 that is seeks freedom and does save such law from the unconstitutionality. Okay. So, if a court finds that the law in question, जो law question में है, मतलब जो law को challenge किया गया है, seeks to give effect to a directive principle, that law tries to give effect to a directive principle, it may consider such law to be reasonable. तो वो law हो जाएगा reasonable in relation to Article 14, that is equality before law, or Article 19, sex freedom, and thus save such laws from unconstitutionality. Clear? Now the classification of directive principles, very important. The constitution does not contain, very important, that constitution does not contain the classification of the directive principles. However, on the basis of their content and direction, they can be classified into three broad categories, that are socialistic, Gandhian, and liberal intellectual. So first is socialistic principle, right? So socialistic principle, this principle reflects the ideology of socialism. Socialism का जो ideology है, these principles, that is socialistic principles, reflects that. They lay down the framework of democratic socialist state aimed at providing social and economic justice and set a path towards the welfare state. Okay, so ये जो principles है, these lay down the framework of democratic socialist state. Democratic socialist state का जो framework है, ये draw करता है socialistic principles. Aim at providing, aim है provide करना social and economic justice and set a path towards the welfare state. So they direct the state. First is to promote the welfare of the people. Welfare state का motto. So to promote the welfare of the people by securing a social order permeated by justice, social, economic and political. Okay, by securing a social order जो permeated by the justice, that is social, economic and political. Second is to minimize, मतलब इसी का ही second part है, to minimize the inequalities of income, status, facilities and opportunities. So आर्टिकल 38 के अंडर टू प्रोविजन है. एक है प्रोमोट करना वेलफेयर ऑफ द पीपल बाय सिक्योरिंग सोशल ऑर्डर परमिटेड बाय जस्टिस, सोशल, इकोनॉमिक, पॉलिटिकल. ओके. सेकेंड इज मिनिमाइज ऑफ इनइक्वालिटीज इन इनकम, स्टेटस, फैसिलिटीज एंड अपॉर्चुनिटीज. ये जो प्रोविजन है, मिनिमाइज इनइक्वालिटीज इन इनकम, स्टेटस, फैसिलिटीज एंड अपॉर्चुनिटीज, दिस वाज एडेड by the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1978. Very important that this provision was added by the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Okay, ये जो डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल है, मतलब ये जो चैप्टर है, इसमें कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट एक्ट को याद रखना बहुत ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है, क्योंकि इससे बहुत सारा क्वेश्चन आता है. ठीक है. सो ये जो टू मिनिमाइज इनइक्वालिटीज इन इनकम, स्टेटस, फैसिलिटीज, अपॉर्चुनिटीज अंडर आर्टिकल 38 है, वो ऐड हुआ था अंडर द 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. नेक्स्ट इज टू सिक्योर द राइट टू एडिक्वेट मीन्स ऑफ लाइवलीहुड for all people, all the citizen. ठीक है. to secure the right to adequate means of livelihood. livelihood का adequate means को secure करना for the all citizen. the equitable distribution of material resources of the country for the common good. very important, not equal. this is the equitable. so equal and equitable में difference क्या है, right? so equal, suppose मेरे पास 100 रुपीज़ है एंड मैं कोई दो इंसान है, एक है पोर एंड एक है रिच, एंड दोनों को मैं 50-50 रुपीज़ दी. दैट इज इक्वल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन. इक्विटेबल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन इज पोर जो है उनको मैं 80 रुपीज़ दी एंड जो रिच है जिसके पास ऑलरेडी पैसा है उनको मैं 20 रुपीज़ दी. दैट इज इक्विटेबल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन. ओके. सो the equitable distribution of material resources of the community for the common good. Next is prevention of concentration of wealth and means of production. means wealth का जो concentration होता है that should be prevent. okay. and means of production. equal pay for equal work for men and women. socialistic principle में है. equal pay for equal work for men and women. preservation of health and strength of workers and children against forcible abuse. okay. So preservation of the health and strength of workers का preserve करना and children against the forcible abuse. Opportunities for healthy development of children. Very important that opportunities for healthy development of children. ये जो provision है that is opportunities for healthy development of children ये modify किया गया था under 42nd Constitutional Amendment of 1976. ठीक है, बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट है ये जो अपॉर्चुनिटीज फॉर हेल्दी डेवलपमेंट ऑफ चिल्ड्रन है दैट वाज मॉडिफाइड अंडर 42nd अमेंडमेंट एक्ट ऑफ 1976. नाउ थर्ड पॉइंट इज टू प्रमोट equal justice and to provide free legal aid to the poor. Okay, so to promote the equal justice and provide the free legal aid to the poor. ठीक है, ये जो डायरेक्टिव है दैट वाज एडेड अंडर द 42nd अमेंडमेंट एक्ट ऑफ 1976. ये चैप्टर में जितना भी अमेंडमेंट है ये याद रखना बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट है, इसलिए मैं बार बार बोल रही हूँ. ठीक है, कि प्रमोट करना इक्वल जस्टिस एंड प्रोवाइड फ्री लीगल एड टू द पुअर, ये ऐड हुआ था 42nd अमेंडमेंट एक्ट के थ्रू. दिस इज अंडर द आर्टिकल 39A. ठीक है, टू सिक्योर द राइट टू वर्क, टू एजुकेशन एंड टू पब्लिक असिस्टेंट इन केस ऑफ अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट, ओल्ड एज, सिकनेस एंड डिसेबलमेंट, आर्टिकल 41. सो सिक्योर करना राइट टू वर्क, एजुकेशन एंड टू पब्लिक असिस्टेंस इन केस ऑफ अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट, ओल्ड एज, सिकनेस एंड डिसेबलमेंट. ओके, सो आर्टिकल 41 के अंडर है कि सोशलिस्टिक प्रिंसिपल में आर्टिकल 41 के अंडर क्या है ना, टू सिक्योर राइट टू वर्क, राइट टू वर्क जो है उसको सिक्योर करना, टू एजुकेशन, टू पब्लिक असिस्टेंट इन केस ऑफ अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट, ओल्ड एज, सिकनेस एंड डिसेबलमेंट. ओके, नेक्स्ट इज टू मेक प्रोविजन फॉर जस्ट एंड ह्यूमन कंडीशन ऑफ वर्क एंड मैटरनिटी रिलीफ. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट that to make provision for just and human condition of work and maternity relief, that is under article 42. Okay, so to make provision for just and human condition of work and maternity relief of article 42. to secure a living wage को secure करना. ठीक है, living wage a decent standard of life and social cultural opportunities for all workers under article 43. so to secure the living wage क्या है? living wage is different from the minimum wage. minimum wage includes bare needs of the life, that is food, shelter, clothing. ठीक है, food, shelter, clothing is the minimum wage and food, shelter, clothing के साथ जब health, education, insurance add होता है, these are the living wage. ठीक है, so living wage are the food, shelter, clothing, that is minimum wage plus education, health, insurance, these are the living wage. ठीक है, so to secure the living wage and a decent standard of life and social and cultural opportunities for all workers, article 43. to take steps to secure the participation of workers in management of industries under article 43A. Okay, this principle was added by the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. Okay, to take steps to secure the participation of workers in management of industries under article 43A, to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living of the people and to improve public health under article 47. to raise the level of nutrition का जो level है उसको raise करना and the standard of living of people to improve public health. Clear? These are under 47. Now Gandhian principle. So these principles are based on Gandhian ideology. Okay, they represent the program of reconstruction enunciated by Gandhi during national movement. Okay, so these principles are based on Gandhian ideology and these principles represent the program of reconstruction enunciated by Gandhi during the national movement. In order to fulfill the dreams of Gandhi, some of his ideas were included as directive principle. So they require the state to first is organize village panchayat. Okay, article number 40. Article number 40 is to organize village panchayats. Okay, village panchayat ko organize karna and endow them with necessary powers and authority and to enable them to function as a unit of self government. Very very important article. Article 40 is to organize village पंचायत. ये किसके अंडर है? गांधीयन प्रिंसिपल के अंडर है. विलेज पंचायत को ऑर्गेनाइज करना एंड एंडो देम विथ नेसेसरी पावर्स एंड अथॉरिटी टू एनेबल देम टू फंक्शन एज ए यूनिट्स ऑफ सेल्फ गवर्नमेंट. क्लियर? नाउ टू प्रमोट कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री. कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री गांधीयन प्रिंसिपल के अंडर है. प्रमोट करना कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री को ऑन एन इंडिविजुअल और कोऑपरेशन बेसिस इन रूरल एरियाज. आर्टिकल 43. ओके, जितना भी स्कीम्स आता है ना गवर्नमेंट स्कीम्स, दे आर बेस्ड ऑन द डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स. ओके, सो प्रमोट करना कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री को ऑन एन इंडिविजुअल और कोऑपरेशन बेसिस इन रूरल एरियाज. नाउ आर्टिकल 43B, टू प्रमोट वॉलेंटरी फॉर्मेशन, ऑटोनोमस फंक्शनिंग, डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्रोल एंड प्रोफेशनल मैनेजमेंट ऑफ कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी. ओके, प्रमोट करना वॉलेंटरी फॉर्मेशन, autonomous functioning, democratic control, professional management of cooperative society. These directives were added by the 97th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2011. Very very important. ठीक है, 97th Constitutional Amendment of 2011, ये जो डायरेक्टिव है, these were added. ठीक है, so again to promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control and professional management of cooperative society. ठीक है, clear? Now to promote the educational and economic interest of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Scheduled caste and scheduled tribe का economic interest को and educational interest को promote करना and other weaker section of the society and to protect them from social injustice and exploitation. And to protect them from social injustice and exploitation under Article 46. Okay, to prohibit the consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs which are injurious to health. Article 47. So prohibit करना the consumption of intoxicating drinks and drug को which are injurious to health. These are under the Gandhian principle. To prohibit slaughter of cows, calves and other milk and draught cattle and to improve their breeds under Article 48. Very very important that prohibit करना the slaughter of cows का, calves का and other milk का जो slaughtering है, that prohibit करना and draught cattle to improve their breeds under Article 48. So इसके अंदर कौन सा आर्टिकल है? 40, that is पंचायत. 43 is cottage industry, 43B is cooperative society, 46 is the promote the educational economic interest SC/ST, 47 is prohibit of consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs, and 48 में है slaughter of cows, calves and other milk. Clear? Now liberal intellectual principles. So these principles include in this category represents the ideology of liberalism. They direct the state to secure for all citizens a uniform civil code throughout the country. That is under Article 44. Very very important that it is under the liberal intellectual principle. Article 44 is under the liberal intellectual principle, that is to secure for all citizens a uniform civil code throughout the country, to provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. Article 45. Very very important, to provide early childhood care. Early childhood care provide करना and education for all children until they completed the age of 6 years under Article 45. Okay, these also liberal intellectual principle. The directive, ये जो directive है ना आर्टिकल 45 का, to provide early childhood care education for all children until they completed age of 6 years, ये जो डायरेक्टिव है was changed by the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2002. वेरी वेरी इम्पोर्टेंट कि ये जो डायरेक्टिव है ना इसको चेंज किया गया था अंडर द 86th Amendment Act of 2002. Originally it made a provision for free and compulsory education for all children until they complete the age of 14 years. ठीक है, originally क्या था ना, originally it made provision for free and compulsory education for all children until they complete of age of 14 years. Okay, so to provide early childhood care education for all children until they completed of age of 6 years, it is under the liberal intellectual principle. It was changed by the 86th Amendment of 2002, right? Next is to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern scientific lines, that is article 48. Okay, organize करना agriculture and animal husbandry को on modern and scientific lines, that is under article 48. To protect and improve the environment and to safeguard forest and wildlife, that is under article 48A. very very important. ठीक है, this directive is added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. ठीक है, 48A जो है ना, this was added under the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. Okay, so to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard forest and wildlife. 42nd Amendment Act कब हुआ था? 1976 में. So we know that Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 में हुआ था ना, Wildlife Protection Act आया था. So नेक्स्ट जो अमेंडमेंट हुआ दैट इज इन 1976 42nd कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट विच इज कॉल्ड एज मिनी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. सो ये जो अमेंडमेंट हुआ इसमें ऐड किया गया है. ठीक है, डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल में टू प्रोटेक्ट एंड इम्प्रूव द एनवायरनमेंट एंड टू सेफगार्ड फॉरेस्ट एंड वाइल्ड लाइफ. तो कौन सा आर्टिकल है? आर्टिकल 44 दैट इज यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड. आर्टिकल 45 दैट इज अर्ली चाइल्डहुड केयर एंड एजुकेशन until the age of 6 years. Article 48 organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern scientific lines. Article 48A protect करना and improve करना environment to safeguard forest and wildlife. ठीक है, 48A. Now to protect monuments, places and objects of artistic or historic interest which are declared to be national importance under Article 49. सो प्रोटेक्ट करना मोनूमेंट, प्लेसेस, ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ आर्टिस्टिक और हिस्टोरिक इंटरेस्ट को विच आर डिक्लेयर्ड टू बी ऑफ नेशनल इम्पॉर्टेंस. नेशनल इम्पॉर्टेंस जिसका जिसका है उसको प्रोटेक्ट करना, जैसे टू प्रोटेक्ट मोनूमेंट, प्लेसेस, ऑब्जेक्ट्स ऑफ आर्टिस्टिक और हिस्टोरिक इंटरेस्ट विच आर डिक्लेयर्ड टू बी नेशनल इम्पॉर्टेंस अंडर आर्टिकल 49. टू सेपरेट द जुडिशियरी फ्रॉम द एग्जीक्यूटिव इन पब्लिक सर्विसेज ऑफ द स्टेट. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, सेपरेट करना जुडिशियरी को फ्रॉम द एग्जीक्यूटिव इन द पब्लिक सर्विसेज ऑफ द स्टेट अंडर आर्टिकल 50. ओके, सेपरेट करना जुडिशियरी फ्रॉम द एग्जीक्यूटिव in public services of the state under Article 50. This is also liberal intellectual principle. To promote international peace and security and maintain just and honorable relation between the nation. Very important that promote करना international peace and security को and maintain just and honorable relation between the nations. To foster respect for international law, treaty obligation and to encourage settlement of internal disputes by arbitration. That is Article 51. Very very important that to promote internal peace and security and maintain just and honorable relation between nations, to foster respect of international law and treaty obligation and to encourage settlement of internal disputes by arbitration. That is Article 51. Okay, so 49 में क्या था? मोनूमेंट, प्लेस, ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ आर्टिस्टिक हिस्टोरिक इंटरेस्ट को प्रोटेक्ट करना. देन 50 में क्या था? टू सेपरेट द जुडिशियरी फ्रॉम द एग्जीक्यूटिव इन द पब्लिक सर्विस ऑफ द स्टेट. देन 51 में प्रमोट करना international peace and security and maintain just and honorable relation between the nation. इंटरनेशनल लॉ ट्रीटी ऑब्लिगेशन इसको रिस्पेक्ट करना. ठीक है. नाउ न्यू डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स, ओके, जो ऐड किया गया था, दीज आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. ठीक है. जितना भी अमेंडमेंट हुआ था इससे बहुत सारा प्रीलिम्स में क्वेश्चन पूछा जाता है. ठीक है. द 42nd अमेंडमेंट एक्ट ऑफ 1976 added 4 new directive principles to original list. They require the state, first is to secure opportunity for healthy development of children. Secure opportunity for healthy development of children. ये कौन सा amendment के through में add किया गया था? 42nd. Then to promote equal justice and to provide free legal aid to poor. That is 39A. Okay. To take steps to secure the participation of workers in management of industries. Very important. Management of industry, ये term को याद रखना, under article 43A. तो this was added by the 42nd Amendment Act. And to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife. जो 1972 के बाद में हुआ था, 1976 में add हुआ था, right? So 42nd Amendment Act, article 48A. So 39, 39A, 43A, 48A. 39 में क्या था? सिक्योर अपॉर्चुनिटीज फॉर हेल्दी डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द चिल्ड्रन. 39A में promote equal justice and provide free legal aid to poor. Then 43A में take steps to secure the participation of workers in the management of industries. And 48A में protect करना and improve करना the environment and to safeguard forest and wildlife. The 44th Amendment Act 1978 added one more directive principles which require state to minimize inequalities in income status, facilities and opportunities. That is article 38 में जो second part में था, right? So minimize करना inequality in income status, facilities, opportunity. 86th Amendment Act of 2002 में change किया गया था subject matter of article 45 and made elementary education as a fundamental right under article 21A. And the amended directives requires the state to provide early childhood care and education for all children until they completed the age of 6 years. So ये जो provision है ये इतना important. Directive principle क्या है? Directive principle of state policy are non-justiciable in nature. But ये child education is very important topic. So इसको ना fundamental right में add किया गया था. ठीक है. 86th अमेंडमेंट एक्ट 2002 में चेंज किया गया था सब्जेक्ट मैटर ऑफ आर्टिकल 45, जो ओरिजिनली क्या था? ओरिजिनली इट मेड द प्रोविजन फॉर फ्री एंड कंपल्सरी एजुकेशन फॉर ऑल चिल्ड्रन अंटिल दे कंप्लीट द एज ऑफ 14 ईयर्स. बट नेक्स्ट चेंज करके क्या किया गया? अर्ली चाइल्डहुड केयर एंड एजुकेशन फॉर ऑल चिल्ड्रन अंटिल दे कंप्लीट द एज ऑफ 6 ईयर्स. Okay, 97th Amendment Act of 2011 added a new directive principles relating to cooperative society. Okay, 97th Amendment Act जो था ना, जो 2011 में आया, added a new directive principle relating to cooperative society. It requires the state to promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control and professional management of cooperative society under Article 43B. Okay. So 97th Amendment Act 2011 जो था ना, वो ऐड किया गया था डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स रिलेटिंग टू कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी. ठीक है. कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी अंडर विच आर्टिकल? 97th Amendment Act. विच अमेंडमेंट? 97th Amendment Act. ठीक है. अंडर 43B आर्टिकल. It requires the state to promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control and professional management of cooperative societies. Clear? Sanction behind directive principle. Sir B.N. Rao, the constitutional advisor to Constituent Assembly, recommended that the rights of an individual का जो right है should be divided into two categories. First justiciable and second is non-justiciable, which was accepted by the drafting committee. Okay, so Sir B.N. Rao, constitutional advisor to Constituent Assembly, recommend किए थे कि right जो है individual का should be divided into two categories, justiciable and non-justiciable. Consequently, the fundamental rights which are justiciable in nature are incorporated in part 3, and the directive principles which are non-justiciable in nature are incorporated in part 4 of the constitution. Okay, so fundamental rights are justiciable in nature, so these incorporated in part 3, and directive principles are non-justiciable in nature are incorporated in part 4 of the constitution. Though the directive principles are non-justiciable, the constitution under article 37 makes it clear that these principles are fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be duty of the state to apply these principles in making law. Okay, so ये जो principles है, these are non-justiciable, but constitution क्लियर कर दिया कि these principles are fundamental in the governance of the country and it shall be duty of the state to apply these principles in making laws. Thus they impose a moral obligation on state authorities for their application, but the real force behind them is political, that is public opinion. So दे इम्पोज ए मोरल ऑब्लिगेशन, एक मोरल ऑब्लिगेशन इम्पोज करता है ऑन द स्टेट अथॉरिटी को ऊपर, ठीक है, फॉर देयर एप्लीकेशन, but the real force behind them is political, that is public opinion. We know that the voting power is on our hand, right? So public opinion बहुत important है, that if any political body does not follow the directive principle, so we can change the political party because we have the voting rights, right? So as observed by Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, no ministry responsible to the people can afford light-heartedly to ignore the provision of part 4 of the constitution. Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer observed that कोई भी मिनिस्ट्री ऐसा नहीं है जो ये डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल को इग्नोर कर सके, ठीक है. सिमिलरली डॉक्टर बी आर अम्बेडकर सेड इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली दैट ए गवर्नमेंट व्हिच रेस्ट ऑन पॉपुलर वोट कैन हार्डली इग्नोर द डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स while shaping policies. Okay, so Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said that a government which rests on popular vote, जो पॉपुलर वोट के ऊपर रेस्ट करके है, कैन हार्डली इग्नोर, मतलब इग्नोर नहीं कर सकते द डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल्स व्हाइल शेपिंग इट्स पॉलिसीज. If any government ignores them, it will certainly have to answer for that before the electorate at the election time. Okay, so कोई भी गवर्नमेंट अगर इसको इग्नोर करे देन इलेक्शन टाइम में उनको वो आंसर करना होगा, ठीक है. नाउ द फ्रेमर्स ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन made this directive principle non-justiciable and legally non-enforceable because मतलब ये जो डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल है ये नॉन जस्टिशिएबल एंड लीगली नॉन इन्फोर्सेबल क्यों है. फर्स्ट इज एट द टाइम ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस इंडिया के पास ना सफिशिएंट फिनेंशियल रिसोर्स नहीं था to implement them. Okay, the country did not possess sufficient financial resource to implement them. First point. Second is the presence of vast diversity and backwardness in the country would stand in way of their implementation. तो डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी में है फ्री लीगल एड टू पुअर, राइट, एंड इक्विटेबल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन. सो इंडिपेंडेंस के टाइम में इतना बैकवर्डनेस था कि वो ठीक से एड्रेस नहीं कर पाता कंट्री. ओके, सो ये नॉन जस्टिशिएबल है क्योंकि अच्छा वुड स्टैंड इन मतलब द प्रेजेंस ऑफ वास्ट डाइवर्सिटी एंड बैकवर्डनेस इन द कंट्री वुड स्टैंड इन द वे ऑफ देयर इम्प्लीमेंटेशन. The newly born independent Indian state with its many preoccupation might be crushed under the burden. बर्डन बहुत ज़्यादा था ना, इकोनॉमिक क्रैश हो गया था, इकोनॉमी को उठाना था, बाकी पॉलिटिकल, मतलब जब इंडिपेंडेंट इंडिया हुआ तब बहुत सारा रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी था, राइट. सो विथ इट्स मेनी प्रीऑक्यूपेशन माइट बी क्रश्ड under the burden unless it was free to decide or the order, the time, the place and the mode of fulfilling them. Okay, so जितना भी promises था तो वो promises को maintain करना, उसको fulfill करने के लिए एक पर्टिकुलर टाइम, एक प्लेस, मतलब एक फिनेंशियल स्टेबिलिटी, ये सब का ज़रूरत था। तो इस वजह से उसको नॉन जस्टिशिएबल कैटेगरी में रखा गया। द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकर्स देयरफॉर टेकिंग ए pragmatic view मतलब realistic view, refrained from giving teeth to these principles. They believed more in an awkward public opinion rather than in court procedure as ultimate sanction for the fulfillment of these principles. So they believe पब्लिक ओपिनियन कि पब्लिक डिसाइड करे, अगर कोई गवर्नमेंट डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी को इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं करेगा तो वोट के टाइम में पब्लिक डिसाइड करेगा कि वो गवर्नमेंट रहेगा या नहीं, राइट। सो नेक्स्ट इज criticism of the directive principles. This is so important. So directive principle of state policy have been criticized some members of constituent assembly as well as other constitution and political experts on the following grounds. First is no legal force. So directives have been criticized mainly because of their non-justiciable character. Very important. ये डायरेक्टिव जो था ना वो क्रिटिसाइज हुआ था मेनली बिकॉज ऑफ नॉन जस्टिशिएबल कैरेक्टर। केटी शाह डब्ड देम एज पायस सुपरफ्लूटिस। ओके, सो केटी शाह डब्ड देम एज पायर सुपरफ्लूटिस, compared them with a check on bank payable only when resources of bank permit. Okay, that told by the Katie Shah, that pious superfluities, and compared them with a check on bank payable only when resources of the bank permit. Nasiruddin contended that these principles are no better than the New Year resolution. जैसे न्यू ईयर रेजोल्यूशन होता है ना कि 18 आवर्स स्टडी करेंगे, डाइट करेंगे, ऐसे मतलब बहुत सारे प्रोमिसेस था। तो नासिरुद्दीन contended that these principles are no better than the New Year resolution which are broken on the 2nd of January. Even T.T. Krishnamachari described this directive as a veritable dustbin of sentiments. So ये आता है कि veritable dustbin of sentiments कौन बोला था? T.T. Krishnamachari. ओके, पायस सुपरफ्लूइटिस कौन बोले थे? केटी शाह. ओके, सो केटी शाह, Nasiruddin said that New Year resolution which break on 2nd January. T.T. Krishnamachari described directives a veritable dustbin of sentiment, and K.C. Ware called them as a manifesto aims and aspirations, and opened that they serve as a moral homily. Very important, they serve as a moral homily. Sir Ivor Jennings thought they were only a pious aspiration. Okay, next is illogically arranged. तो फर्स्ट क्या था? फर्स्ट था नो लीगल फोर्स, सेकेंड इज इलॉजिकली अरेंज्ड. तो जब हम लोग देखें सोशलिस्टिक, गांधीयन एंड न्यू लिबरल प्रिंसिपल्स, वो ठीक से अरेंज नहीं किया गया था, राइट. सो 38, 39, 40, 41 ऐसे तो अरेंज नहीं था. सो क्रिटिक्स ओपिन दैट द डायरेक्टिव्स आर नॉट अरेंज्ड in a logical manner based on a consistent philosophy. According to N. Srinivasan, the directives are neither properly classified nor logically arranged. कौन बोला था? N. Srinivasan. N. Srinivasan said that the directives are neither properly classified nor logically arranged. The declaration mixes up relatively unimportant issues with most vital economic and social question. सो ये जो डिक्लेरेशन है वो मिक्स अप कर दिया था रिलेटिवली अनइम्पॉर्टेंट इशू विद द मोस्ट वाइटल इकोनॉमिक एंड सोशल क्वेश्चंस. आर्टिकल 38 के अंडर ही कितना सारा था ना, 38, 39. तो वैसे करके क्या हुआ ना, जितना भी वाइटल इकोनॉमिक सोशल क्वेश्चन है उनको वो सबको प्रायोरिटी नहीं मिला. इट कंबाइंस रादर इनकॉन्ग्रुअसली द मॉडर्न एंड विथ ओल्ड एंड प्रोविजन suggested by the reason and science with provision based on purely on sentiment and prejudice. So it combined rather incongruously the modern and the old and the provision suggested by the reason and science with provision based on purely sentiment and prejudice. Sir Ivor Jennings too pointed out that these principles have no consistent philosophy. ठीक है, सर आइवर जेनिंग्स pointed out that these principles have no consistent philosophy. Next is conservative. So accordingly, Sir Ivor Jennings, the directives are based on political philosophy of 19th century England. ये जो directive है ना वो based on the political philosophy of the 19th century England. He remarked, the ghost of Sydney wave and Beatrix wave stalk through the pages on the text. Part 4 of the Constitution expresses Fabian socialism. This term is important. Part 4 of the Constitution expresses Fabian socialism without socialism. He opened that directives are deemed to be suitable in India in the middle of the 20th century. The question whether they are suitable for the 21st century cannot be answered. 20th century के लिए ये जितना भी प्रिंसिपल्स है दैट आर सुटेबल, बट 21st सेंचुरी के लिए है कि नहीं वो आंसर नहीं किया गया था, बट इट इज़ क्वाइट प्रोबेबल दैट दे विल बी इंटायरली आउटमोडेड. नाउ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल कन्फ्लिक्ट. सो के सनाथनन has pointed out that directives lead to be constitutional conflict between the center and the state. Constitutional conflict किसके बीच में होगा? Center and the state, between the president and the prime minister, between the governor and the chief minister. K. Sanathanan has pointed out that directives leads to a constitutional conflict between center state, president, prime minister, governor, chief minister. According to him, center can give direction to the state with regard to implementation of this principle, right? Center state को बोलेगा कि state apply these principles, right? And in case non-compliance can dismiss a state government. Okay. Similarly, when the prime minister gets a bill which violates the directive principle, ठीक है, when the prime minister gets a bill which violates the directive principle passed by the parliament, the president may reject the bill on the ground that these principles are fundamental to governance of the country and hence the ministry has no right to ignore them. Okay, ये नॉन जस्टिशिएबल है, बट ऐसा कर दिया गया कि इसको इम्प्लीमेंट करना नेसेसरी है. ठीक है. The same constitutional conflict may occur between the governor and the chief minister at state level. Okay, now utility of the directive principle. Utility क्या है? In spite of the above criticism and shortcoming, the directive principles are not unnecessary appendage to the constitution. So criticism and shortcoming तो है, but the directive principles जो है ना are not an unnecessary appendage. Unnecessary appendage नहीं है constitution का. The constitution itself declares that they are fundamental to the governance of the country. According to L.M. Singhvi, an eminent jurist and diplomat, the directives are the life-giving provision. The directives are the life-giving provision of the constitution. Constitution को life देते हैं. They constitute the stuff of the constitution and its philosophy of social justice. Okay, N.C. Chagla, the former Chief Justice of India, is of the opinion that if all this principle, all the directive principles are fully carried out, अगर अच्छे से कैरी किया जाएगा, then हमारा जो भारत है, our country would indeed be a heaven on earth. ठीक है, वो कौन बोला था? MC छगला. ठीक है, India would then be not only democracy in political sense but also a welfare state looking after welfare of its citizens, right? So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had pointed out directives have great value because they lay down that goal of Indian polity is economic democracy as distinguished from political democracy. Okay, so B.R. Ambedkar had pointed out directives have a great value because these directives lay down that goal of Indian polity is economic democracy as distinguished from political democracy. Granville Austin opined that directive principles are aimed at furthering the goal of social revolution or to foster this revolution by establishing the condition necessary for its achievement. Sir B.N. Rao, the constitutional advisor to Constituent Assembly, stated that directive principles are intended to moral precepts for the authorities of the state. They have at least an educative value. So Sir B.N. Rao, the constitutional advisor to the Constituent Assembly, stated that directive principles are intended as moral precepts, moral moral precepts for the authorities of the state. They have at least an educative value. According to M.C. Setalvad, the former Attorney General of India, the directive principle, although confer no legal right and create no legal remedies, are significant and useful in the following ways. So M.C. Setalvad gives some ways that directive principle legal right नहीं है and legal remedy भी नहीं है, but ये बहुत ज़्यादा significant and useful है. So he gave reason that they are like an instrument of instructions or general recommendation addressed to all authorities in Indian Union. Okay, so directive principles are like instrument of instruction or general recommendation addressed to all authorities in Indian Union. They remind them of the basic principle of new social and economic order, which the constitution aims at building. Okay, so DPSP remind them of basic principles of new social and economic order which constitution aims at building. They have served as useful beacon light. Okay, so ये directive principles are served as a useful beacon light to the courts. तो कोई भी अगर लॉ है जो चैलेंज किया गया है उसका constitutionality अगर प्रूफ करना चाहते हैं तो the judges refer the directive principles. They have helped the courts in exercising the power of judicial review, that is power to determine the constitutional validity of a law. Okay, they form dominating background to all state action. Very important. So directive principles are form dominating background to all state action, legislative or executive, and also a guide to the courts in some respect. They amplify the preamble, which solemnly resolves to secure to all its citizens of India justice, liberty, equality and fraternity. So ये जो directives हैं, they amplify the preamble, which solemnly resolve to secure all citizens of India justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. Okay, so preamble में जो mention है उसको amplify करते हैं. ठीक है, the directives are also play the following roles. So directive also play the following roles. First is they facilitate stability and continuity in domestic and foreign policies in political, economic and social spheres in spite of the changes of party in power. Very important. His directives facilitate stability and continuity in the domestic and foreign policies. Domestic and foreign जितना policy है, ये जो directives है, they facilitate the stability and continuity domestic and foreign policies in political, economic and social sphere in spite the change of the party in power. जो भी पार्टी आए उनको मैंडेटरी है कि वो मैंडेटरी नहीं है बट they should implement the directive principles, right? So they are supplementary to fundamental rights of the citizen. They are intended to fill the vacuum of part 3 by providing for social and economic rights. Their implementation creates a favorable atmosphere for the full and proper enjoyment of fundamental rights by the citizen. So डायरेक्टिव का जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है ना वो क्रिएट करता है एक फेवरेबल एटमोसफियर फॉर द फुल एंड प्रॉपर एंजॉयमेंट ऑफ फंडामेंटल राइट्स by the citizen. Political democracy without economic democracy has no meaning. Very important. Political democracy without economic democracy has no meaning. Okay, so ये डायरेक्टिव इम्प्लीमेंट करता है, क्रिएट करता है, implementation creates a favorable atmosphere for the full and proper enjoyment of fundamental right by the citizen, and political democracy without economic democracy has no meaning. They enable the opposition to exercise influence and control over the operation of the government. So ये जो directives है enable the opposition जो है ना opposition को enable करते हैं to exercise influence and control over the operation of the government. ओके तो ऑपोजिशन तो जीतना चाहते हैं राइट. सो वो लोग ऑपोजिशन जो है वो इशू क्रिएट कर सकते हैं कि डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल फॉलो नहीं हुआ है, कोई भी लॉ अगर है तो द ऑपोजिशन कैन ब्लेम द रूलिंग पार्टी ऑन ग्राउंड दैट इट्स एक्टिविटीज आर अपोज टू द डायरेक्टिव्स, राइट. So they serve as a crucial test for the performance of the government. Very important. Directives serves as a crucial test for the performance of the government. The people can examine the policies and programs of the government in the light of these constitutional declaration. They serve as a common political manifesto. Very important. Directives served as a common political manifesto. A ruling party, irrespective of its political ideology, has to recognize the fact that these principles are intended to be its guide, philosopher and a friend in legislative and executive act. Very important. कि डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल में जितना भी प्रिंसिपल्स है, दे एक्ट एज गाइड, फिलोसोफर एंड फ्रेंड of its friend in its legislative and executive acts. Okay.